All right, welcome to LOPSA East Tennessee. I'm Jesse Trucks, and today is our 7th anniversary of meeting. Started in June of 2012, June 5th. We're going to go a little bit over some of the history of how this was formed, what our goal was in the beginning. I even dug up the original presentation that I used that day, and I used some really bad fonts, as it turns out. I'm going to do a little bit about the numbers. I should probably go into here's our agenda. Tiny bit about me, so why do you care who I am? Our history lesson by the numbers is a few stats, and we can talk about some of those. Dug some of those up today, and a little bit about the future, which is ETSA. No, it does not stand for anything technically. All right, so a little bit about me. My name is Jesse Trucks. I'm the Minister of Magic at Splunk. That is my title. In fact, you can email me at jtrucks@splunk.com, ministerofmagic@splunk.com, or just mom. Seriously, mom@splunk.com. I don't even have to hand out my card these days, but I do have them. I've been in Knoxville a little over 8 years, moved here in December of 2010. I've been doing IT ops security operations of various small to large internationals, and we're in between. First time I got into security, we got hacked. We didn't know anything about security. We being an internet provider in '98, so had to learn how to do everything, like rebuild the entire infrastructure and figure out security on the fly. So I've loved it with security ever since. It's great. I'm one of the founding. I'm a LOPSA founding member. In fact. Fun story, I am actually the first paid LOPSA member because I was in the tech team and I set up the pay system, and so I tested it. I spent 6 years in the LOPSA board of directors. It was a fantastic experience, absolutely loved it. Andy, if you want to know more about it, talk to Andy too. He's suggesting people get in the elections this year. It's a great experience. I really enjoyed it. And I've used that experience in my career in a number of ways since then. And the contacts are great too, of course. I was a founder of the MAD LOPSA, which is the Madison, Wisconsin chapter, local chapter. I think it's been defunct for a number of years. Might have been resurrected. I don't know. I moved here. I left there 10 years ago, so I'm not sure what its status is now. I'm a co-founder of LOPSA East Tennessee, of course. We'll talk a little bit about that. I came here to work for Oak Ridge Regional Labs to do security for the NCCS supercomputer group. And then I worked at the lab for a total of about 3 years doing that. And team leads for cybersecurity operations team, went to another team company that is now defunct, essentially defunct. A lot of people know it around here, e-coasting. It's a very interesting thrill ride. I held multiple management positions there. It was a very interesting place. And then I've worked at Splunk for a little over 4 years now, and I'm the only employee of Splunk in the area. We like to joke that my office is my house. My commute is only 15 minutes. That's the airport. And my other office is whatever Marriott or American Terminal, and they all look the same. So. And I'm really happy to be here because I rarely am actually in town when this meets, even though I want to be here, except for one time when my kid was sick, so I could come. So a little history lesson. I moved here, as I said, December 2010, and I wanted to form a chapter. I lived in upstate New York for a little while. I managed a data center full of supercomputers for a hedge fund. It was like this weird science project thing. But there's nobody up there really. There's almost no tech community really. And I worked alone in a 30,000 square foot data center. And I missed the community in Madison. And Madison, the chapter I formed was actually, I formed it after the Sage chapter closed because the Sage chapter was run by the person who was then founding LOPSA, David Parter. And so I founded the local LOPSA chapter, and we moved on from there, and we did that for a number of years. It was a lot of fun. And I came here, and I just spent a year kind of getting under my feet, and I couldn't find the timeline, but I created a mailing list for LOPSA East Tennessee just to see if I could find somebody, right? Get some interest. Nobody at RNL at the time was really interested. They didn't want to inform it. They're like, yeah, you make that, we'll come. But I had to make it, right? I don't know the area. I don't know what a good venue would be. How do I get sponsors? I don't know anything. And then I found my IRC log today. Mike Julian, who no longer lives here, March 15th, 2012, was at 8:42 a.m. and 26 seconds. He sent me a message asking me something about LOPSA's IRC stuff. We got to chatting because I noticed that his location was Knoxville, and fast forward a few months, our first meeting was in June. He knew everybody. He knew all the venues. He got us a place at Cafe 4. It was great. So we formed a chapter. There's his actual full name. He now lives in San Francisco. He runs a company doing strategic level monitoring and subcontract. He subcontracts out his technical implementation. But he's basically a monitoring expert. He's written in the Riley book. I always tease him. He's left us. Actually, no, he's right. He moved to Portland last year. He lives in Portland now. Lives in San Francisco for a while. So our first meeting, June 5th, 2012. Like I said, I found the presentation that I made for that day earlier today. It was kind of funny. And it basically just talked about what kind of topics could be of interest. It was just a generative discussion. There were 18 people. We thought that was fantastic. The average LOPSA chapter group at the time was maybe 6 or 7, 8 people. A big attendance at our Madison chapter, which is very, very well attended on a routine basis. Biggest, I think, was like 28, 29, 30, something like that. So we thought 18 in the first day out. That was great. We worked with almost everybody in it. But it was a start, right? It was mostly O&L folks who knew. And it was at Cafe 4. I don't know if anybody used to come back then or has seen, there's these conference rooms. There's a conference room above Cafe 4 because 4 Market Square is actually a not-for-profit building. And it houses mostly not-for-profits, including a church. And it has some other community programs and things. And you used to be able to rent out this conference room. It's a little bit bigger than this one. And then they changed the rules because they gave it to us essentially for free. And then they charged us to break even on the labor of setting up and taking down and cleaning up, right? And then Mike and I would just pay that in pockets, like $70 or $80 a month or whatever it was. And we did that for a number of years. They reorganized how they're doing things. They decided they're going to pay. We had to leave. So it's nice numbers. And so we ended up having to squat at Pellissippi for a number of years. 2 years, was it? Yeah, about 2 years. And then we've been here for quite some time now. Yeah, it's grown. So let's see how many people we've actually had. The specific numbers under this, these are just from a Google Doc spreadsheet chart. Yes, I work for Splunk. No, I don't have these numbers in Splunk because I'm too cheap to pay for running a Splunk server, and I don't run crap at my house. But so if you look, we've had attendance all over the place. We lost our home somewhere in here. I'd have to actually look. I forgot to put the slide in. But it was when Ben and I were like,
that 70 was at Cafe. That was at Cafe 4.
The 70?
The big peak.
Man, that big peak was actually at Pellissippi. It was one of the first meetings. Yeah. We are missing a number of dates and times in here. See the kind of flat lines. There's a couple in January, and there's a couple in 2015, a couple in 2016, and almost all of 2017 are missing because Ben and I suck at record keeping. And that's just it, right? But if you can look at the trends, there's a trend line here. But if you look, our average is still pretty high, right? I think the actual number right now is still in the 30s, low 30s, right? That's amazing. Most user groups, user communities of any kind get 10 to 15 people on average over time, right? With rarely more than 25 or 30, except for your big cities. And even then, nobody can make them. Nobody can get there because it's too big of a city, right? And here's some other way to look. Average annual attendance, right? So for 7 years, you can look, year 4, through the roof. Incredible amount, right? And some of this is skewed because we don't have data for parts of these years, right? And so as a result, it would probably be much higher. So our trend line is going down, but it probably would be more flat, to be honest, but we're missing data. So this is with the data that we have. Just overall numbers, average attendance. This is cumulative over time. So you can see we've actually maintained pretty steady amount of attendance, pretty high, actually. So the cumulative average over the entire time for every month that we have. And we have 63 months out of the 7 years, which is pretty good, considering the fact that our record keeping was actually instant messages. Actually, not even that, it was text messages. And so we've been doing really, really well. We consistently, if you look at the numbers, first year out of the gate, almost 30 people average. Second year, over 35, 40 on the third, right? Fourth year, through the roof. And that wasn't just because of that 170. We had several really high, above 50, like high 50s, low 60s, so a few of those numbers in there. That really, and also part of it, I think we're missing a couple of months, so it skews a little bit, right? But generally, it's relatively accurate, about as accurate as you're going to get. And I suspect, based on what I know on how these kinds of communities work, for the number of years that I've been doing these kinds of things, the reason our numbers are going down is because we don't have a home in a larger space with more complicated sponsors availability, because we are not a non-for-profit yet. LOPSA, the national chapter, or national institution, that organization is a 501c3. The way it is structured, they're not really in a position to manage finances for chapters. And so those chapters who need to manage finances, i.e. get sponsors and pay for things, right, have to form their own 501c3. Not an unheard of paradigm, right? Relatively common in these kinds of organizations, right? And then, of course, there's all like liability and all this kind of stuff that goes with that, and all this legal stuff. And so we are forming, and we would have done it faster if I wasn't as slow as you can get in getting that filing finished with the IRS. I actually finished the paperwork, really. We have filed, we are a legal entity. We're a not-for-profit corporation in Tennessee with Ben, Andy, and I are the three officers listed. And we have a permanent address. Actually, I think I forgot to actually fast forward a little here. Come on, there we go. Here's the officers that I just mentioned. So we've filed, we have our charter and our bylaws, they exist. We have an address of record, which means we have a mailing address. It's fantastic. UPS can get you a mailing address that is not a PO box, and it's a PO box. But it's a physical address with a unit number. It's great. It's not that expensive. It's a fantastic service. So you can use that to create corporations, right? And we file with Tennessee. We have to finish the 501c3 filing. We have to organize ourselves to get a bank account started, right? Because we're a legal entity in the state of Tennessee, we can create a bank account. And then we have to figure out what our sponsors' packages and levels would be, and get sponsors and find a new home so we can expand. And so that's kind of where we're at on that front. Kind of most of what I've got for slides. And the one thing I'd say about this is that, yes, we have been doing great in this space. And Tech Systems has committed for years, since day one pretty much, that they will always be here with us and they will always help us. And they have been fantastic, and they will continue to be so, I'm sure. Once we're a 501c3, it actually gives Tech Systems more ability within their organizational structure of their company to provide us with better resources in the long run. A dream, which I didn't put in the slides, but a dream of Mike, Julian, and I, when we first got together, we had a beer after our first meeting, and we thought, 18, that's amazing. I hope it stays at 10 or 15. And it kept going up. Next one was 19, 23, and it just kept going up. And a few months later, we decided, let's make a conference. And we didn't, because we don't have the kind of funding, because we can't get sponsors. And so we decided to put a hold on it for a variety of reasons. And then his career went through a blender, and then mine went through a blender, and now we're standing here. But we did the feasibility studies, and we looked at what venues are available, what kind of regional conferences already exist in various ways, and the time of the year. The time of the year is actually the hardest thing about making a conference happen is when. Are you going to step on a holiday? Are you going to step on graduation for high school and college? Are you going to step on prom? Yes, this will affect attendance. Are you going to step on LISA? The national organization is going to suck off all these speakers, right? You know, who are going to go to LISA, whether it's speakers or not. You know, all these kinds of things, or regional local events. You don't want to do it around elections. You know, there's this huge, complicated mess of a schedule you got to figure out in your area. And at some point you decide, yeah, half our people are going to go to that conference, but this is the best we can do. And you just roll the dice and you see if you can get a venue, right? And then you start, the paradigm is that's the time of year probably will happen going forward. We can start, we figured out, we talked to a ton of people who run conferences, small conferences, you know, including the people that did the East and LOPSA East, LOPSA West, and you know, the other, whatever they used to be called, I forget. And the thing that is important is if you have a local community that regularly has 40 to 60 people in it, which when we get back to having more space, the ability to bring in possibly even occasionally pay external speakers to come in, although I love that we have basically relied on our own community. That's a part of the thing here is let's share, right? But then if we have 40, 50, 60 people coming frequently on a routine basis and we make it dirt cheap to attend, right? And it's local, you don't have to get a hotel. If even half of your people who come really frequently come, you have a 25-person conference. If you double that, which isn't too unreasonable, you have 50 people. There are conferences that have been around for 12, 15, 20 years, and they're not more than 200 people. 50-person conference, it's pretty good. And you can do it relatively reasonably. It's only, I don't know, it probably only costs like 30 grand. Yes, that seems astronomical, like, wait a minute, for 50 people, right? But if you're doing things like providing meals and other kinds of things, right? So it's somewhere between 15 and like $40,000, $50,000, depending on how exorbitant and elaborate you get, or if you pay speakers and keynote speakers and that kind of stuff, or if you keep it 100% local and more casual, right? That is a vision that I have, and I think that we can do it here because we have an incredibly robust, rich, and varied IT community here, and I think we can do it. It might be a year, might be 6 months, might be 5 years, but I think we can do it here. Knoxville has the talent to make it happen, and Knoxville has the IT people and the IT talent to make it successful. So I just want to put that bug in your ear. All right, questions, and I'll repeat them for the recording. Yes?
More of a comment. I would also wonder how much of it is opportunities to improve in sales and marketing, because sales and marketing and geeks are not necessarily the categories people necessarily put together.
His comment was that it may be more of sales and marketing in terms of, you mean in terms of attendance, right? Yes, in terms of attendance, because geeks and marketing often don't mix. Yes, I've learned a lot about that working at Splunk. Because though everybody likes to tease me and say I'm in sales, I am not. We are sort of in sales support, but not really, because we're not a billable resource. But I've learned a lot about how that kind of ties in. And yeah, that's part of it. And part of it is we can't afford to do anything that would be paid advertising, right? And at some point, now wouldn't it be fun, even if we never do a conference, that we did like a quarterly large mixer of some sort, you know, something like that, or just like a one-day meetup. You know, we can do these kinds of things once we have some funds and resources and a little more fluidity. Comments, questions? Yes.
Have you spoken with James Harrell yet? For his group 10sec, which is basically a lot of the InfoSec stuff in the Knoxville area, is almost in the exact same situation we are in. They just completed their 501c3 and they're trying to do something similar like that in the coming years.
Question for the microphone is, have we talked to James Harrell at 10sec, because they are doing something similar and they have not-for-profit status? I've not yet, but that's a ways off, or a few weeks.
They might have tips that I can use contact with that.
Yeah, if you connect us, that'd be great. Yes.
Have you been to like a B-Sides Knoxville, security, non-conference conference?
So I personally have not been to B-Sides Knoxville or another B-Sides, because my only opportunity to ever actually manage to put it on my schedule, I was running a Splunk project at DEF CON instead, so I couldn't. I have not, but I've heard amazing things, and almost everyone else in the security group that I'm in, I'm a security specialist at Splunk, security strategist technically. It's my title is kind of funny, but that's my role. And so we basically do nothing but talk at security conferences and do security consulting. most of my team teases me because I've never been to a B-Sides, and I heard they're fantastic. And I heard that you guys, who all went to B-Sides here? Like, it's pretty good, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just brought it up because just the format of how they do it here, they do it down Market Square. They have 3 venues, 3 tracks. So I don't know cost-wise compared to renting out a large conference space type of situation, if it would be more cost-effective, with sponsors involved with doing that type of setup for as far as having a conference. That type of format could be a way to go about it too.
If you're not providing drinks, snacks, and meals, then your cost is a fraction. So yes, meeting spaces are actually not that bad. You can usually rent out a pretty decent sized meeting space or multiple meeting spaces for a few $1,000s, all in AV everything in a day, and for 150, 200 people pretty easily. So we could do it relatively inexpensively too. Whoever ends up deciding on going forth and doing an investigation into basically feasibility. What would be the cost? What would the cost be for more of an unconference approach, or sort of mid-level where there's some things provided, or snacks, right? That kind of stuff, or meals. The best way to do it is you have each break is sponsored by a sponsor. So this break will be unlimited, blah, 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 drinks, sodas and snacks or whatever they are for 5,000 or 1,000, whatever the hotel costs are, that kind of stuff. And that's generally, so most of those costs are actually a wash for the organization if you do it right, or you get enough so that you've got a little seed money for the next project. It depends on how that works. But yeah, so I would say it depends on whoever's investigating it at the time.
And then as for meeting speakers, we looked at having one remotely connect in, like with the Zoom meeting. We did a DC 865 where they had a guy, I think he was in Atlanta, and we just kind of had a Zoom meeting. So we all still met. He was set up on camera, and we kind of just met with him that way instead of having to travel here on site and pay that cost. It was really, we all had our setup and we were going through things and stuff like that. But it was an interesting alternative instead of having to pay for a speaker to travel to come on for just a monthly meeting.
So I do that for work a lot, where I'm the only person not there. Like literally, and not like internal work meetings, because that happens a lot too, like one person remote or whatever, or in our company, not as often because we're pretty distributed, but I'll be the only person not at a customer site, that kind of thing happens occasionally, or somebody comes in to do an hour of a 5-hour customer meeting, that kind of thing. And it can be very effective. There's basically 3 things that you really need to make that effective, especially for a conference setting where you're really expecting like this has got to be good, right? Is you want to make sure your connectivity at your facility is fantastic. The person who is dialing in or calling in, their connectivity must be fantastic, right? You don't want them sitting in the airport terminal. I know, I've been that guy. It doesn't work, okay? And you also want to make sure that their audio video setup is good, right? And the best thing is have their face. Make sure they've got a camera, right? Like I geek out, I've got a mic on a boom with a little shock mount and all this crap, that kind of stuff. And if you have that, it can be a really good recipe for success that way. However, for a conference setting, especially starting out, when you want to say this is local, this is regional, right? You want the person in the room, because half the reason why a conference is more valuable than just a meeting or two is because you get to be interactive with people who are more expert than you are in some ways, right? Or they're looking to learn from you in other ways. And those kinds of interactions, the hallway track, as some of us call it, right? That is often the most valuable thing, is that connectivity in the social network. I've seen people's careers be made just by going to conferences and meeting really smart people and learning from them and applying themselves and networking. Mike Julian being one of them. He's fantastic. So Mike, when you watch this later, you owe me a beer. Other questions, comments? Plenty of time. When is your first time you came to LOPSA East TN?
Say that again?
When is your first E10 meeting?
I'm not sure, maybe over a year ago, beginning of last year, maybe.
Ben, was it,
September 2013.
Andy, what about you?
Have I been coming longer than you? Probably.
I think so. Because our answer so far is a year.
No,
What's your
it,
name,
no,
sir?
it would have been about
Nicholas.
Would have been about the same time. It
Ben,
was-
September
it was late
2013.
2013, yeah.
Andy's
Yeah.
late 2013. What about you?
September 2017-ish.
September 2017?
November 2018.
November 2018? Awesome.
I
When you,
remember I came the first time in the spring semester of 2014.
spring 2014, first time?
Cafe Tour. It was just, I was blown away. I didn't understand a word that anybody was saying. Literally had no idea what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It did leave an impression on me for sure.
Yeah, I remember coming late once, and I think it was Chris Layton was doing some
Yeah.
super detailed technical.
Yeah.
And I used to work with this guy. Chris is a great friend of mine. He is fantastic. And now I think I am so rusty at actually managing systems because I don't do it for a living